Okay, now that we've got the basics of our level manager all set up, we need a way for our player to die, wait a second, and then get respawned back at the starting position. So we're going to open up our level manager script again, and we'll just wait for this here. There we go. And okay, so within our level manager here, we know that we're calling this respawn function that will do all of this stuff here and reset our player. But what we want to use now is a thing called a coroutine, which is something that kind of runs outside of the normal loop of stuff in the world and kind of runs on its own timeline, and then can be it can carry out objects in a certain sequence and wait a little while between things happening. So how the kind of function of Unity works in general, the general kind of order of things is, if we go back to our player controller, what we're doing at the moment is whenever we enter our trigger, it starts going down from top to bottom until it completes all of this code here. So what happens first is we run into the other.tag and checks if it's a kill plane, and if it is a kill plane, like what we want to happen, it starts going in here and it ignores these first two lines, and then it goes to the level manager .respawn and says, okay, on the level manager I need to run this respawn function. So then it pops over to the level manager script, it goes into that, it does these three things in order here, and it says, okay, once we reach the curly bracket, it goes, okay, I'm done running this function now, so I'll pop back over to the player controller here, and we can go, okay, now that we're back to here, we move on to the next line, which is to stop checking for the kill plane. Then it moves on to checking for the checkpoint, and then finally it stops doing any kind of checking, and it knows that it's finished working through entering the trigger. So that's all fine and dandy, but if we were to, in our level manager here for example, if we were to add a 1 second delay in here between entering the checkpoint or entering the kill zone and being deactivated here, and then moving the player, waiting a second, and then reactivating, what will happen is we'll go to our player controller, we'll do this little check, it'll go to this point, it'll go to the level manager here, but then it'll wait a second and nothing else in the game would be able to happen. It wouldn't be able to run any other kind of, the update loop and everything like that would be paused, and we'd just be completely thrown out, and the whole game would crash and stop working, and we'd end up with, or if not crash, we'd end up with huge kind of pauses in the game and hitching up, and obviously we don't want that to happen. So what we use is something called a coroutine, which kind of branches off to the side and exists in its own little world and lasts for however long it's set to last, then stops and disappears and plays back into the normal flow of things in the game. And the way we run a coroutine is, it has its own kind of special way of being written, which is, we'll type in public here to make sure that it's open and available to anybody else, but we don't actually want it to be available to anything outside this script really. But we want to say public I enumerator, if I could spell it properly, so I enumerator like that, and what we're going to call it then is respawn co, with our open and close brackets like that, and our open and close curly brackets. So we just call it respawn co just so we can just handily and easily remember that this is a coroutine related to our respawn function. And the reason we say public IEnumerator rather than public coroutine or something like that, that's just what it's called within Unity. It's just the thing you have to use. It's usually something that I personally forget the name of myself and have to look it up constantly, but it's just one of those things that as you use it more, it becomes more familiar and you get used to using it within the game itself. So now within this respawn coroutine, we're going to want to do all of this stuff about deactivating the player and everything like that. So we're just going to grab all of that, I'm just going to cut it out of there and paste it in there like that. And then within here we're going to be able to add some delays to timing and stuff like that. But before we do that, we need to know, or we need the game and Unity to be able to run this thing here. So if we know back in our player controller we're calling the respawn function, so we need our respawn function here to be able to run this. And normally when you're dealing with functions within the same script, for a normal function, what you would just do would just say respawn co, and then our curly brackets, and a semicolon at the end to make it run like that. But coroutines work in their own kind of little world slightly differently. So what we have to do here is say start coroutine, like that, and then in the bracket, what we want to do is type in the string name of the coroutine. So we use a quotation mark there like that, and then we want to type in respawn co the exact same way it is here. So respawn co, and then close the quotation mark, and then close our bracket and hit our semicolon. So when we're using coroutines like this, we don't have to remember to put in the brackets that follow it, because we don't actually want them. So what we're doing is, what happens is it goes, okay, start a coroutine and find the one within this script that has the name respawn co. So when that happens, it starts running this little bit of script in its own little side world. It's not stuck to the same timeline that everything else is. So like we said, once we go through all this and we go to respawn, it goes over to here. What happens is it says start with coroutine, and rather than the normal flow of things then jumping to here, what happens is this goes, okay, now I'm done, but at the same time this thing goes, oh hey, I just started up, I should start doing stuff too. But they're not interfering with each other, and they're kind of just happening essentially simultaneously. So now in our respawn coroutine, we can go, okay, now we're free to mess around with time a little bit. So straight away, obviously, we want the player to be deactivated. As soon as they hit the kill plane, they should be not able to move or anything like that. So we know that we want them to be deactivated. So that's fine. That can be the first line there, like that. So we put a little bit of space in between there. The next thing that happens is that the player moves to its new position. So what we have two choices here, basically. We could let the game immediately move the player and then wait a second and then reactivate them, or we can let the game wait a second, then move them and then reactivate them. It doesn't really matter too much. It's kind of just whichever you decide you want to do. But either way, what we need to do is tell the game to wait a certain amount of time. And the way we do that is to type in yield return new wait for seconds. And then in the bracket here, we want to say how many seconds do we want the game to wait for. So we could type in a number here. We could say 5f, and that it would wait for 5 seconds then. But what we want to do, if we scroll back up here, we already said a float value that we want to wait the respawn to wait for. So here we'll just type in, okay, we want to use the value of wait 2 respawn. And we close that bracket and hit the semicolon at the end. So what is all this stuff here? It's essentially just basically what you need to run the wait for seconds. So we have yield, which kind of, it just tells the game to it kind of breaks the game and says, okay, if we get to this point, well, not breaks the game, sorry, it doesn't break the game, it kind of breaks the flow of this little script, and it says, okay, we need to hold up for a second. We're not returning anything, we're not telling it to do anything new for the time being. We want it to wait for a certain amount of seconds, and we want to wait for the respawn time. That's kind of the basics of how it breaks down. But all you really need to know is, if you want the game to wait for a certain amount of seconds, this is the line of code that you need to put in to make it wait in the game. So now what should happen is, however long we want our respawn to wait for, now we'll wait for that amount of time and the player will respawn into position. So we'll save this here now, pop back into Unity, and we want to make sure that we actually give a value to that on the level manager. So just wait for it to compile, and if we go over to here, we're going to make it wait for 2 seconds, and then the player is going to respawn back at the start. So we also notice that our player here, by default, the slot is empty, but that doesn't matter because we're telling our level manager script is being told to find the player. So if we actually hit play here, we should see this will fill in with the player here. So there you go, it automatically fills into there. Okay, so now we should see, if we walk over the edge here, the camera freezes for a second, and then our player pops back into place. And this is a much more kind of natural feel for a game. So now we know if we were to walk over to here, hit the edge and fall down, we're like, oh damn, okay, I know I hit that edge. I get a second while the camera kind of teleports back, and then we're all ready to go and ready for action. So there you go. That's the basics of adding a little bit of a delay using the level manager. And in the future, we're going to actually use our level manager for a lot more things to control the world and stuff like that. But that's one of the kind of basic functionalities that we want to have in place with it. So next time, we're going to continue on and start adding some more stuff to the game.